are not able to join us today that you'd like to share this recording, we will send it out after the event to make sure that others are able to hear this webinar, or if you yourselves want to go back and listen back through some of the details. We will also follow up with a few of the timeline items that you'll be seeing in the webinar, so don't worry about frantically taking notes. You will be able to see and access these resources after today's webinar. We certainly encourage any questions or comments as we go through. We have muted everyone on entry because we've got a little over 65 folks joining us today. So if you have a question or comment, feel free to put it in the chat box. I'll be monitoring that as we go throughout the webinar. And as questions come up, I'll ensure that they are leveled up to Chris, Gretchen, or myself. So again, thank you all for joining us today for the Data Quality and CISDM Updates webinar. We are really excited to have you here. So let's jump right in. So for today, we're going to cover a few things. Some exciting announcements around the end of year process. So based on feedback from the network and data administrators, how can we better sort of timeline out the EOI process to make sure that it's something that is as efficient and use of your time as possible. And so we're really excited to have some updates for you all in terms of that process and timeline, as well as the system upgrades for this summer. So we'll be talking a little bit about what those upgrades are and what that will mean in terms of system shutdown in the summer, as well as dates. We're going to go over a little bit of the Communities and Schools National Data Culture and Change Management approach. So the national office is sort of zooming out and thinking about a long-term approach to change management around data culture. So that includes both the system of CISDM as well as things that are at sort of a higher strategic level in terms of data culture within our organization, and that goes at all levels for site coordinators all the way up to our board and executive directors. So we're really excited to share some of those approach elements with you all. And then finally, we'll be going over some of our new engagement and information sharing efforts that we're revamping and refreshing. So we're really excited about some of the tools and resources we will be refreshing, but also doing sort of a tools analysis and ensuring that everyone who has their hands in data and data culture in our large family of network affiliates have access to the resources and tools that are most relevant for their work to make sure that, again, they are serving students with the most efficiency and effectiveness that they can. So we're really excited to share some of those engagement information sharing efforts. And then toward the end of the webinar today, we will have a dedicated time for Q&A. So if you want to hold your questions for them, that's fine. But again, feel free to throw your questions in the chat box. We have a few stopping points throughout the presentation today in order to sort of pause, reflect, and hear any of your thoughts. So again, thank you for joining us. This is our agenda for the hour together. This is being recorded, and we will share out further information following today's webinar. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Gretchen O'Sullivan, who I'm sure needs no introduction, but I will have her introduce herself regardless. Gretchen, you are muted.
Am I unmuted?
You are. Go for it.
Great. Wonderful. So hi, everybody. As Jesse said, my name is Gretchen O'Sullivan. I'm the Director of Data Quality at the National Office, and I believe that most of you probably do know me, or at least my name. And I work very closely with CISDM and the end of year report. So those are the two things that I'm going to be focusing on talking to you about today. And first of all, just a little background of why we decided to try a phased approach to the end of year report this year. In the spirit of continuous learning, we kind of had a meeting with the people at the national office that participated in the end of year verification process. And we think that there are a few things that we can improve about our process. And these are the main objectives for what we're trying to do this time around by having a phased approach throughout the calendar year. First of all, I think that this is really going to reduce the burden on the data administrators and state office representatives, the people who work closely with us to collect and verify the end of year report data. So many of you on the phone are in that position. And if we kind of look at smaller sets of data at a time. I think it'll just be easier to focus on those and get the data quality we need there, and it'll be less overwhelming than trying to have everything due all at once. We also think that it makes more sense to pull the data from CISDM or have you report data to us when it's most relevant to you, when you're capturing that information throughout the year, when it's most convenient, as opposed to having everything due all at once in September, which is what we typically do. And I really do believe that we'll get better data accuracy being able to spread this out over a longer period of time and kind of catch errors more quickly and being able to focus in on different pieces of this. So that's the intent here. And in the next slide, I can kind of tell you about the different phases and a more specific timeline, especially regarding that piece about when the data is going to be pulled. So we're starting pretty soon, but not to worry. The first phase should be very straightforward and pretty simple. So we essentially want to start in May with getting the set of schools that you are serving, the information that is current. You won't have to, look back to the previous year. You won't have to worry about whether a school is active or inactive in CISDM. We kind of want to reduce all of that extra confusion and just ask you, we're in the school year. Who are you serving? What schools are you serving? So that's basically the same intent behind the staff information as well. The affiliate staff, the school staff, anybody who's currently employed in May or during this school year is kind of who we're looking at. Instead of waiting until September, which we did previously, and kind of have you tell us who used to work at the schools or at the affiliate, it'll be more in real time. In June, we would like to have all of the school end-of-year report forms in CISDM completed. Of course, we would encourage that to be done anytime up until June, but that will be the deadline. We are kind of hoping that that would enable site coordinators to do this before they leave for the summer, and that's just one less thing to worry about when they come back from their summer break for those of you who are who employ 10-month employees. In August, we would want to have the affiliate end-of-year report form complete. So we're kind of, not trying to do any main data pulls or data collection in July. We know the site coordinators, again, are typically gone. And so we're really going to focus on the things that would be easiest for you to provide at that time. So if the affiliate data admins can focus on that level of information, so you're not worrying about the school and student data, that would be, one less thing to worry about once we get into the fall. And that's going to be the bulk of what we're looking at in September, is that student data. Even though we expect that most of it will have been complete in CISDM by the end of the school year, obviously we know there are a number of students who attend summer school. The graduation is not, completely official sometimes until August or September. So we're really giving people extra time to catch up on that data collection, fix anything that looks like it might not be correct in CISDM, and that would be kind of early fall. And then we have a pretty small phase for October to catch that last bit of information that we've heard from folks in the network is kind of difficult to get sooner than that, and that's the school metric information. So you might not know the attendance rate at your school, the graduation rate, things like that, until it's official from the school, and sometimes that doesn't happen until much later in the summer or even in the fall. So that's the last piece of data that we're going to try to gather in October. And at that point, if we've pretty much finalized and verified throughout the calendar year all of that other data that I mentioned, the data verification process at that point should be a much lighter burden on everybody involved, and we should be able to get the data back to you a lot sooner than we did this past year. So I didn't want to completely fly through that, but I also know that we have limited time here today. I don't know if now, if anybody already had a question about the specifics regarding these end-of-year report phases.
Hey, Gretchen. Yeah, there's only 2 questions came through. The first is there a specific format we'll be using to submit the information in May?
That is excellent. And you'll actually see there that I didn't call this out, but it is called out on the slide. The phase-specific resources and instructions will be released prior to each due date. We essentially, for the first one, we are going to be pulling data that already exists in the system, so there won't be a lot of work on your part or your site coordinator's part. So we'll provide specific instructions, but these first few pieces of data, we really are going to focus on what is already existing in CISDM, and then ask you to fill out specific forms as they kind of need to happen throughout the calendar year. So that was a good clarifying question, and we will provide everything we need as soon as we are able to do that. When the report content is set, we'll get that to you and then just kind of go through these phases with you with more technical assistance and resources.
Great. And so, Gretchen, 2 more questions have come in. The first is, I think you sort of just spoke to it, that we will go more in-depth on form specifics at a later date as it starts to roll out. Is that accurate? Yes,
for sure.
Okay.
And I didn't mention this before, but a lot of you may know, especially if you've been involved with the end-of-year report for multiple years, that the content itself doesn't typically change a lot. Once in a while, we'll rework a section, add a question, or remove a question, but we don't anticipate any major content changes this year. And so any changes that we make in CISDM, we'll be sure to explain exactly how that will look.
Okay, great. Another that's come in is, could you go a little more in depth on phase 2 in terms of the completed school EOI report form?
Yes. So the school EOI report form and the affiliate EOI report forms basically refers to those things that you are actively creating in CISDM for your affiliate, or for site coordinators, they would do it at the school level. So those things that you're typing in that you don't already capture throughout the year, like the affiliate revenue, questions about the school that aren't related to the students that you serve, or the things like the partners. So that kind of information, which we did have last year and we may tweak slightly, would be official forms that we refer to as the EOI report forms. Other information, like in phase 4 student data, I know that sounds very vague, but that's really going to capture all of the information that we collect on students that we ask you for at the end of each year. But most of that will have been entered by the site coordinators throughout the school year. So that would include the gender and race kind of demographic information, the goal achievement for the students for each goal, the number of students who graduated, that kind of information. So while that usually does involve a pretty extensive verification process, the data themselves are going to just be pulled directly from CISDM. So we'll just be very clear at each phase what things you have to proactively add to the system, how to view it, when we're going to pull it, and that kind of process.
Great. And 2 more sort of unique questions, or specific, I should say. One is, this is the first year for some to do summer school, which will run into July. And so will that affect the school EOI reports due in June?
That is an excellent question. Assuming that the content in the school end-of-year report forms is not related to that, then my hope is that site coordinators would still be able to provide that information in June. But that actually is a really good example of why we wait until the fall to get the student data. So all of those students that do attend summer school, hopefully their classes and promotion or retention are all final by the end of September. So if anybody has, as we go through these phases and talk about the deadlines and how the information will be presented, if anyone has any, significant conflicts or concerns, we'll do our best to address those and work with you to figure out how best to get that information.
Perfect. Thanks, Gretchen. And very last one, and this might be a co-Gretchen and Chris response, but the question is, how does this timeline align with the CQS data polls for affiliates in the 2019 reaccreditation cohort?
I'll jump in here. So that's a good question. I think we have outlined this phased process with the TQS team, and they understand what will be sort of asked for during the period of time that folks will be reviews. Typically for the TQS data report pools, we will pull multi-year data so that we can verify if something is not at the point of completion. By the time we pull that report, we can look back and see what was done the previous year and verify that those pieces were taken care of in the previous year. So if we are not at a place where we have set an expectation that, for example, school goal achievement or school metrics are entered by the time that that TQS data report is pulled, we would have the expectation that school metrics or goal achievement was entered in the previous year, and we'll use that to verify that you have met that standard.
Gretchen, anything to add? Or
I don't think so. If there are any concerns about timing, again, that could be something that we talk about as we go through the year. But I do want to reiterate that some of the information that we're pulling directly from CISDM will have already been entered based on our expectations for all affiliates, regardless of whether they're going through reaccreditation. So by the time we want to pull the student data, the students should have all been enrolled, that kind of thing. So I don't anticipate any conflicts with TQS and reaccreditation.
And very last question, Gretchen, and then we can move on. Just one quick question around, will we be sharing verification spreadsheets and databases so that folks can be checking their data along the way in the same way that National does, so that that folks can flag errors earlier?
That is a good question. We are revamping some of that process from last year as well. We do want to make sure you know where to view the data, how to look at things, how to help support your site coordinators, and of course, if you're a state office, how to support multiple affiliates through this process. So we want you to be able to access the data and know what you're looking for. We won't do things exactly the same way as we did last year by pulling data multiple times to kind of send to everybody and try to catch every flag and thing that's missing. We may do like kind of one of those major pulls before the deadline. So we will include that information in our resources and any webinars that we have to walk through the specifics to make sure that nobody's in the dark about what data we're looking at and what we expect of you, essentially.
Perfect. Those are all the questions I have. Thanks, Gretchen.
Thank you all for asking such good questions. And so I wanted to now just give you a bit of a taste of the CISDM upgrade. I don't want to overwhelm anybody with the idea that we're doing a major overhaul of CISDM. This really should be have a very minimal impact on you. We don't want to disrupt people's day-to-day work. And of course, we wouldn't want to disrupt you being able to use the system and to have a good data quality. So I just want to give you an idea of what to expect in our timeline. So really there are three kind of pieces to this as it would pertain to you all and your staff. You won't have you shouldn't experience any disruption in the system during this initial phase. This is really kind of for CIS National and our technology partners to do the upgrade itself. So to clarify the term upgrade, we often use the words enhancements or updates to talk about things that are happening in CISDM or that we're planning for the future. And that usually refers to items that we as CIS National are implementing in the system, new features, new reports, things like that. But the term upgrade we really use to focus on the technology itself. So this is essentially just bringing us up to the current version of Caseworthy's platform. And you probably, or I would say almost definitely, have experienced these sorts of upgrades with technology that you use, such as on your smartphone, internet browsers, computer-related things, software. You're often either prompted to opt into a higher version of that software, or it's even forced on you as technology improves and the companies want you to have the most current technology available. So this is kind of what we're doing with Caseworthy. Now the process, we want to be very intentional and make sure that everything that we have developed in CISDM thus far, and will continue to develop, is upgraded properly, and that you will not experience, new glitches or see things that you didn't expect. So to that end, we are copying our production site of CISDM into an upgraded version. And so that'll all be done behind the scenes, but that's starting in April. And that'll really give us pretty much 3 months of back-end testing. And we are working with Caseworthy as well as another technology partner to do that kind of testing. So the forms, the hierarchy, all of those technical pieces that are so integral to our system will be tested to make sure that the upgraded version can handle all of the things that we have built out for CIS. But again, this is all kind of offline, and you will not be affected in your work in CISDM. The main disruption to you, if you want to call it that, would be the first week of July. And, we wanted to make this a time when most schools will be out. I do understand that, in cases of summer school, this might be a time when site coordinators are actively working. It also is the week of the Independence Day holiday, so I was kind of hoping that a few more people would also be out of the office, and this would reduce disruption in that way as well. So we're going to limit this to 1 week to make sure that the upgrade can go live into the system, and we can do some final front-end testing just to make sure everything looks good before you log back into the system. So after that first week of July, you should, be able to log in as you typically do, and you might see minor changes to the system's interface, but anything that is different that, Caseworthy would make us aware if they're incorporating a new feature or something like that. We will make sure that you have all of that information prior to July 8th. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any specific questions that I can address at this time?
Gretchen, I am not getting any questions. I'm getting a couple of makes sense. Oh, here's one. So after last year's upgrades, reporting was an issue. So wondering if the reporting side of the upgrades will be available sooner after these upgrades are made.
Everything that is basically live in production in our current system site now, or as of April, will be pulled over into that upgraded site and tested, and that includes all reporting features, the hierarchy from all levels as a, in each role as a site coordinator, data administrator, state admin. So we believe that all of the testing will be complete by the time we essentially go live again at the beginning of July, so that you should not see any difference in what was the case before the system went down. hopefully that
Great.
addressed your concern. But yeah, this is really why we're putting in this extra kind of time and monetary resources into the back-end testing.
Great. Second question, when will the mirrored upgrades be available on the test site? This individual staff training begins July 22nd is why they're asking.
Oh, that is an excellent question. I think that I will have to ask Caseworthy just to make absolutely sure. Our priority, of course, was the production site, but I'll ask them if there would be any delay in copying that over to train and what that would look like. So if we can get that to be done pretty much right after production, we'll definitely push for that. But I will ask Caseworthy for an official response. Thank you. That's a very good question.
Perfect. A couple more that have come in terms of a plan for rolling out the upgrades, and this is in specifics to webinars, supporting materials, training videos, et cetera. I know we'll be talking about the types of support for adoption later in the webinar, but so I can speak to that. Yes, we will be pulling together a plan for rolling out the upgrades in terms of what's new and what people can come to expect, sort of why any changes that are outside of a system upgrade might have been made. And then, yes, that will include webinars, supporting materials, training videos, as well as something we'll be hosting in the summer for data administrators. Let's see. Another question about the TQS report, which I might raise to both Chris and Gretchen. Improvements to the TQS report, let's see, will those changes take place over the July 1 through 5 shutdown?
That is also a great question. And I'm serious when I say these are good questions. I really do believe that. We are, yes, thank you for mentioning that, because we are working on overhauling really the TQS data report. I haven't gotten all of the specifications that we need to explain to Caseworthy in order for them to give us a quote of how long it will take to implement. So I would expect the report to be done no sooner than the July timeframe with the upgrade itself. But if we can get it available sooner, we will definitely pursue that. So whenever we know a more specific timeline based on Caseworthy's ability to make all of the changes we're requesting, we will let you all know. But yeah, definitely plan for it to be released when the upgrade is complete.
Great. A couple more TQS related since we're on that topic. Any sense of scope, and this is back on the last slide, Gretchen, but I think we can speak to it on this slide. Any sense of scope of this, quote, student data that will be verified in September, and would that be TQS relevant data or something else or additional?
We will post the end of year reports as soon as they're official, the content itself, the questions. If you have access to the links from last year's report, it'll be largely the same information. And so again, it's really going to be the things that we already track in CISDM and typically ask for every year, but the main items are the demographics and attributes of the students, as well as their goal achievement information and end of year statuses. Those are usually the big key items that are student specific.
Great. And the last question I have in the inbox thus far, and this one I love because it's an overachiever question. If they wanted to give us data earlier than a phase deadline, can they?
That is a nice overachiever question there. Yeah, as long as everything is able to be done in CISDM, I would actually encourage people to do things before the deadlines. That would be wonderful. So for the things like those affiliate and school EOI forms where you actually have to go in and type in information and save it, we will tell you as soon as they're ready to be entered. And then any point after that and before the deadline, we would encourage people to get that in as quick as possible. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, and just as a note there, I think more broadly, we want to make sure that in managing the submissions of 133 organizations that we're not sort of verifying that data as they necessarily all come in at different times. But if you and your affiliate have a specific need to submit data early and have that verification process conducted sooner rather than later, then we would then go ahead and reach out to us so we can work that in. I think there's probably some reasonable need for some affiliate-specific adjustments, but in general, we won't be verifying it outside of that process.
That's a good point, Chris. And I also really would encourage folks that, especially if you want to do this a little more quickly, but really just in general, because we are going to give you all the information you need to be able to see the data that have been entered. You'll know which schools, have their reports started or completed as opposed to the ones who haven't. Really encourage all of you to participate in that data verification process by just keeping an eye on those things and making sure that it will move along more efficiently this year. And then that way, when we get to October, your data will probably be perfect and you'll just be good to go. Start reporting to funders.
Great. Thanks, Gretchen. Those are the last of my questions.
All right. So I know I've jumped in a couple times, but for those that don't know me, my name is Chris Murray. I'm the principal for strategic initiatives at the national office. If you knew me in a somewhat recent past life, I led our TQS accreditation and reaccreditation processes, and now focused on some of these these broader strategic initiatives around our, especially those that will involve sort of a network change and change management that we'll be managing here at the national office. So I'm partnering with Jesse and Gretchen on this particular initiative. So we wanted to first go through some of those big announcements, specifically around the EOI phasing and the CISDM upgrade, just to make sure that those things were on your calendar. Those were the major takeaways from this initiative. But we also wanted to talk about this revised approach that we're taking around CISDM adoption, but specifically as it relates to moving beyond kind of just the focus on the technology and the system, but really the broader initiative around data culture and as it relates to model fidelity. So that's where this change initiative is coming from. And so you're going to be seeing a lot more from us around this data culture initiative. And we'll be talking a little bit about what that is and how the national office is organizing its staff around this top priority for us. So really this strategy starts with the model. So our focus is around honing in on model implementation and leveraging CISDM, but also as a tool here, but also using a broader data culture to support model implementation, both in terms of fidelity to the model, but also adjustments, improvements, and adaptations to the model over time, as we've seen over the last few years as well. So we're really starting with this problem statement, and I know problem is a heavy word, but this is sort of where we're starting. And there isn't a problem, but we wanted to have something that sort of served as a motivating factor for how we would move forward through this initiative. So again, our problem statement here is that we serve our students best when data use and analysis is embedded in our day-to-day work. Just to pause on that statement, really how we view CISDM and the tool that is available to our network is one that it enhances the day-to-day work and allows folks to demonstrate and actually effectively implement the model. So a behavior change really is necessary to integrate a positive data culture into our operations in terms of focusing on model fidelity and then positive outcomes for students. And so where's our strategy going from there? So Model fidelity and student outcomes are front of mind here, but we are deploying change management approaches that will support site coordinators to do their jobs in an efficient, effective, and data-informed way. And so that's really the basis for this change management initiative, and I'll walk through some of our approaches in the next couple slides. So how we're seeing this change management imperative is really focusing around making sure that organizations, change management more broadly supports organizations to improve in performance. So what does that mean for us is how we're translating this change management initiative into the work that we do as communities and schools. So really change management is that bridge that's going to get us from those requirements to results. So when we talk about requirements, we're thinking here as it relates to communities and schools and the work of site coordinators and data administrators. These are the check boxes that you're checking off around, okay, this data was entered, this data was collected, and we've met the deadlines associated with this, particularly around standards, but also the broader data collection requirements as set by the data quality team. And moving that toward results. So how do we achieve results with that data? And using a change management bridge to get us there. Similarly, from outputs to outcomes, we talk about outcomes with students and positive outcomes for schools and students. And so it's really making sure that our data culture shifts in a way that focuses less on just outputs as it relates to numbers, but really the outcomes, the positive outcomes for students, and how do we make adjustments there. And then solutions. So solutions to our data culture are, for example, CISDM. So CISDM is a solution. It's a technology solution. It's an enabler that gets us to model implementation. But we want to be able to move from solutions to benefits. So it's not just about solving a process or addressing a process, but really getting us to a place where we're incorporating CISDM and data culture as sort of intrinsic to model implementation and the benefits to our network in terms of doing that effectively. So we are, as I mentioned, here at the National Office, organizing ourselves around this initiative. And so it is a shift in the way we do work. And so in seeing this data culture initiative as a change management initiative, and thinking about the people, process, and technology associated with this change management initiative, we are organizing teams of individuals to support these different aspects. So the people part of this is the who's doing stuff. So when we talk about the who here, we're talking about a whole host of stakeholders, all the way from school district personnel down to social work interns who are supporting case managers and site coordinators on the ground. And so this aspect of this is really about how are we going to engage folks, communicate with folks, and share information related to our priorities around data culture, CISDM use, and the adoption of this technology. So along those lines, the technology piece is fairly straightforward as it relates to data culture within communities and schools, but that's CISDM. So what we do the stuff with. And at this point right now, the primary technology here is CISDM. Obviously, we have some secondary technologies like Yammer, the CISDM Help Desk, webinars and outreach through WebEx and those types of things, but the primary focus here is going to be on CISDM. And so our technology efforts right now are really focused on fixes, to be frank. So we understand and have heard and have experienced the challenges related to the technology associated with our data culture. And so right now, the focus and the priority efforts around our technology initiatives within this broader change management effort is on addressing issues related to CISDM, making sure that site coordinators can actually use the system effectively and efficiently to do their work. And then the process piece here is how stuff is done. So we are organizing teams around process improvement, and whether that's related to shifting steps within the workflows within CISDM, or it may be guidance around site coordination and case management processes. Simplification and improvement are the things that we're trying to accomplish around our process efforts. It also allows us to introduce quality assurance oversight on some of the changes that we might be, or the information that we might be sending out because the process piece really houses a lot of the basic requirements that we've outlined within the model. So actually, sorry, I jumped to the next slide. So I'm going to pause there. That is, again, this is how we are organizing the national office. Jesse's going to talk a little bit about where some of the pieces that we've already begun working on, how you're going to start seeing these, and how you're going to start receiving information from us as it relates to this change management initiative. But I will pause for any questions about what our thinking is around this and how we'll be engaging you. But like I said, Jesse has some more details on the upcoming slides.
So Chris, I'm not seeing any questions around the change management process or pieces that you've outlined, which indicates to me that it's perfectly clear to everyone.
Good, good. Or just so unclear that everybody's just, their eyes have glazed over at this point. But yeah. All right, thanks. And I'll hand it over to Jesse.
Great, thanks, Chris. So I think what's really exciting is that we're laying on a new approach, or I should say refreshed approach, to the support that we're providing to the network. And part of that really means that we need you all, the audience that showed up to this webinar about data culture and CISDM, to really continue partnering with us, providing feedback and input around the types of resources, tools, and supports, and the engagements that we're rolling out related to things like the big things like system upgrades in the summer, but also the things that have practice implications for site coordinators and program managers and folks who are in schools doing work with students. So I think what we're really excited about as it relates to the people part of that three-piece process for change management is continuing to make sure that we have the open and clear communication pathways with folks like you who are really in the day-to-day weeds of not only data culture, but the actual practical implications for how this work supports and enhances the way that we support students. So really excited to be sharing some of the initiatives that we will be revamping and refreshing, but also some new ways of engagement and tools and resources that we'll be creating to ensure that things like job aids and resource documents and guidance is relevant and useful, and really thinking about the individuals and people first as we continue to revamp and create new tools. So next slide. Great. So we're thinking about direct engagement. So touch points will we be connecting with you all as well as practitioners, site coordinators out in the network, and providing opportunities not only for them to receive information, but to provide feedback. So a little bit of give and get as we go through this process and partner as a network together around this overarching idea of data culture. So first off, just wanted to announce a 2019 Summer Data Administrator Gathering. So this will be an invite-only gathering at the national office for 25 data administrators, likely a group from state offices represented, affiliates with a large number of staff they're supporting, and then some of our investment communities such as Challenge Schools and Growth and Impact. Essentially, we're going to be bringing them in the week of June 10th for training on the CISDM enhancements. So they'll get a sneak peek of what those system upgrades will look like, get to test the system, do some training on how to train others. They'll be providing us some feedback on reporting needs. So what is it that they need in order for their communities to benefit utilizing the system, but also data culture in general. And that ultimately our hope is that we have a diverse enough group brought in for this gathering that we're able to sort of lift all boats based on that feedback. And then finally, they will be working in partnership with us to bolster the data culture within the network. So we're really thinking of this, as Chris mentioned, beyond just tools, resources, webinars, and touch points, but really how do we hire, recruit, retain, and develop the types of individuals who have a real commitment to data culture and quality, while also at the same time thinking about our processes and our systems and how we can enhance and better those for those individuals who were brought in to really support students. So approaching all of this work, whether it's a tool and a resource or a job aid, or it's a way and a practice that we work with the network, with that lens of data culture and quality and why that's so critical for the students that we serve. So that's the 2019 Data Admin Gathering this summer. Next, we'll have a little bit of a revamp. So again, I mentioned there will be some new things like that Data Admin Gathering, and then we'll be refreshing some things that we do now as a part of our engagement. So the CISDM office hours are going to be shifted to a monthly occurrence. So these will really be focused conversations where you can come and practitioners can come and ask questions about CISDM, issues that might be arising or questions people might have. This would be sort of that one-on-one guidance and support on CISDM navigation. Again, those can be really helpful to join because other people might have questions that you've not yet run up against. And so this is a really good interactive space to be engaging with the data team at the national office, where you can test some ideas and assumptions on how to really maximize your CISDM use and data culture at your affiliate. And then finally, part of the reason we're reducing the number and frequency of office hours is we wanted to add an additional webinar opportunity. And so launching in the fall as the semester starts in the 2019-2020 school year, we will be hosting a monthly webinar that will be topic-based on the typical school year calendar and activities. So really, as we're thinking about this data culture integration, we're thinking about how is the system of CISDM aligning with, how is it user enabled throughout the school year? So whether you've got site coordinators that are coming on for their very first year and they're learning how to develop a school-wide need assessment and how to use CISDM to do that, we want to be topic focused in these webinars. So we'll really be driving the content. We'll have a calendar of those webinars so that folks can sign up in advance and kind of have an idea looking forward into their school year. If they're a seasoned site coordinator and potentially struggle with one area or another, they can sign up for a specific webinar. But if they're a new site coordinator or program director who's coming on and needs a more in-depth sort of process update on how CISDM can align with model implementation, these will be great webinars for them to join monthly. Again, we'll be reviewing existing resources to support on data collection, entry, and analysis, and then guidance on workflows and data entry requirements. So these, again, are topic focused, and they're really aligned with school year calendars and activities. Great, I have a question here, but I think that I've just answered it. So the question is, will webinars include job aids for site coordinators on CISDM functionalities and tasks? So part of the hope here, and Gretchen, feel free to jump in, part of the hope here and the lens is, if you're a user of CISDM as part of your work and integrated student support inside of a school system, we really want to start from what does your calendar year look like, really starting in August and going through the school year and how you'll be using the system, setting up new students, et cetera. So we'll be kind of parsing that out so that from a practitioner level or site coordinator level, they're able to learn sort of the steps in the process and how they can use the system. So it'd be great for onboarding new site coordinators, but it'd also be great for program directors and site coordinators who are currently working in the system and just need a refresh on how some of those processes work. Great. Any other questions on that? I think I've got one in the Q&A box. Give me 1 second to open that. Great. A question around, and this is maybe for Gretchen, will monthly CISDM office hours still be for data administrators and the webinars open to all site coordinators? What do you think, Gretchen?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And I think that we can structure it that way because, well, so essentially the office hours, the intent, is for us to just be available for questions. And the thought was that data admins are a small and highly knowledgeable group to kind of talk through things with. Webinars, if we are kind of presenting information more than just interacting the whole time, I think it does make sense to include the site coordinators in that. So I think it'll depend on what we're trying to present and how relevant it is to each audience. But if that would be useful to them to be able to engage or hear things directly. But data admins may also feel that it's easier for them to get as much information as possible and disseminate it out. So we can kind of work through the logistics of what that would look like, and maybe some of them would be geared towards site coordinators specifically and some not. Sorry if that sounds kind of wishy-washy. I want to be flexible with the, what would really suit the needs of the network as a whole. So I think it's a good thing to think about.
Great. Thanks, Gretchen. And then one more question that came in terms of the webinars being posted somewhere for folks to access later. The answer is yes. So we would record those webinars and post them so that if someone attended and they want to go back to hear how a question was answered or how something was shared or trained on, they can do that, or if someone's not able to join the webinar, they can go and reflect on that as well. So this will be a part of our ongoing engagement with the network around data quality and culture. So in other words, people will have a listed calendar of when those CISDM office hours are monthly, as well as the topic-based webinars and the dates and registration links for those. So we'll ensure that those are pushed out to the network and somewhere accessible where people can ensure that they are up to speed and up to date and registered for what they want to join. Great question. Great, I think we're ready to move on, Chris. All right, so staying informed. This is a couple of items that will be coming down the pike that we've heard in terms of folks having kind of a high-level view of what are the issue management reports and enhancement updates and kind of what's coming down the pike and what is CIS National already aware of potentially in terms of issues management and glitches. And then also sort of a feedback mechanism from the data team at the national office to be able to share with others prioritization lists of what it is in terms of issues and glitches that we're working on currently so that you all as users can really see what's coming down the pike in terms of enhancements and updates. So this is really our way of trying to level set in terms of expectation setting so that folks can see, yes, if you've got an issue, it might already be on our radar. We just want to show you where that is on the list of priorities and anticipated date for a fix or an update. So we will be developing some of these tools. Some of them are already in development, and we'll just be making them visible to the network. So, for example, the monthly issues management reports. So we'll be creating a report to share with data admins so that you can sort of see what's been completed in terms of issues that have come up and then upcoming priorities for the month ahead. So that'll include things like completed system fixes, upcoming fixes that are on a timeline, and then our priority list of issues. And so part of what we're hoping there is that, again, just reiterating that we're really partnering with you all, and we would love for you to sort of have a vision into what it is we're working on and making sure that that we sort of acknowledge that we hear when there are issues that arise, particularly to the level of affecting many affiliates, and give you a visual into sort of what we're working on for the month. The next piece is a quarterly enhancement update. So this is really a report for major system enhancements. So that would be things like completed system enhancements, upcoming enhancements with a timeline, and then the prioritization again. So again, this is just a way for us to help you visualize sort of what's coming down the pike in terms of enhancements and an acknowledgement that we've heard you when you submit issues and tickets and requests for changes and updates. And then finally, ongoing messaging. So for us, as more urgent matters kind of come to our attention or we need to announce upcoming engagements, we will be sending data administrators ongoing communications via email, CISDM, and Yammer. So for us, this is sort of coordinating the way that we communicate, thinking about you all, again, as partners in this data culture change management work. Next slide. So resources and support. So again, what we're really looking at is both developing new user-friendly and user-focused tools and resources, but also revamping what we have. So things like Job Aid Library, where people can access, based on their position and role in an organization, resources that will help them do their job well, both with the system, but also when it comes to data culture. And so you'll see some framing around things like recruitment, retainment, and development of staff, sort of how to interweave in practices, potentially for program directors as they think about helping with development of site coordinators, how to maybe implement a data day for their site coordinator, or how do you hire with the lens of a data focus, et cetera. We'll also have our on-demand walkthroughs. So again, that would be things like the CISDM webinar, or sorry, the monthly webinars, topic-focused webinars, as well as other resources that are sort of voiceover videos that are short, and folks can access those to help them, again, use the system. And then process-based handbooks and guides. So updating, revamping, and then potentially as needed, creating new resources that should help folks do their job well as it relates to CISDM. Next slide. I know we're running short on time, and I want to make sure there's time for Q&A. I have like 2 minutes. So finally, resources and support. So this slide, I definitely wanted to take a moment to chat with you all about. So if you have clicked away from the screen, to do other work, which I totally understand, I ask that you just really quickly look back at the slide. This piece, I think, is the most critical because there's nothing more frustrating than submitting a question and feeling like, you're not getting an immediate answer. So we really want to show you how we're approaching the resources and support communication pathway from you as a data administrator to the national office and the data team, just to make sure that those questions are going to the right places so that you get answered in a quick and fashionable timeline. I know our data team does their absolute best in ensuring that every question gets answered, and so I just want to make sure that folks are aware of what's really the best pathway to get your question to the right audience. So there's 3 ways to sort of get support and feedback. So one is around issue management. So this is really systems focused. If you're in system and there's something that feels glitchy to you, or for example, it's not working for you. So an example here on the screen, I got an error screen when completing a needs assessment, or I've been kicked out of the system unexpectedly, or I've just saved information to a student's record and now I can't see it there. Those examples are the type of thing that should go through the system feature on your data admin dashboard through the issues management icon. So those are the types of things like system glitches and issues related to the system itself. Those should go through issues management. Ultimately, what that helps us do is collect all of those issues into a tracker. And again, as we feed that back out to you all as data admins, we're able to show you, hey, we heard those issues as a theme or an issue. Was it user error, or is it something that we're addressing, so that we can, again, give you a visual into what we're working on. The middle piece here around CISDM Help Desk. So this is really around process. So this is something that might be specific to your affiliate. I'll go back to that question that was asked earlier in the webinar around, hey, in the EOI process, we are going to be doing summer programming, and so what does that have, how will that impact our reporting for June? So that's a great kind of question to go into the CISDM Help Desk. That's something really unique to your affiliate, and so might not be system related, but is process related, and so you've got a question about it. That's a great time to use the CISDM email address. So CISDMhelp@cisnet.org. And this would also be any follow-up on something you've already submitted through issues management. When you submit something through CISDM in the issues management icon, you'll get an email response from the CISDMhelp@cisnet.org email address. So that's a great back and forth tool. And then finally, Yammer. So Yammer is really our space for connecting, collaborating. We want you all to use that to brainstorm with each other, connect on best practices and resources. And again, this is for that really high-level data culture work as well. So it doesn't have to be system focused, but it could also be data culture focused. So we're really encouraging you to use that space, the CISDM 2.0 Data Administrators Yammer space, to ask those general questions, sharing your best practices, and really providing support to your peers. So that's a great place to kind of noodle questions around with one another, et cetera. But really shouldn't be used necessarily for crowdsourcing input regarding potential glitches, because your question may not get answered as quickly as if you were to use the issues management in CISDM or the CISDM help@cisnet.org. So just wanted to kind of clearly define what each one is for. We will send this out after the webinar as well, and just encourage you to use these. They really are here for your help and benefit. If you're feeling like you're going to pull your hair out because you keep having the same glitch, there's a resource for that. There's a way for you to get in touch. I promise the data team is working basically around the clock to try to answer those issues and try to get things fixed, because we know ultimately those that can have impacts for students, and that's why we're all here. So wanted to share that slide. And then let's see, I think the next slide is around questions. Let me check the chat box. If you have a question, feel free to throw that in now. And then, so here's a question. How will we receive these supports? Yammer posts, when will this begin, et cetera? That's a great question. So I'm going to let Gretchen take this last key takeaway slide and just sort of put a pin in that you will be hearing more from us over the next few weeks in terms of these resources, enhancements, and updates, both as it relates to systems as well as process and people. But Gretchen, I'm going to kick it over to you just to go over this key takeaway and kind of final reminders in terms of timeline.
Yeah, thanks, Jessie. So, we just kind of wanted to recap so that you can kind of see everything all together as we move through the end of year report phase, starting really very soon, I guess, in May. That's like just upon us almost, and going through the early fall. Kind of in the middle of the summer, we're not going to be doing any official data pulls or verifications in July for end of year. And the focus there will be on, making sure that system upgrade goes smoothly. So that'll be your kind of July milestone. Don't forget, in general, that we're going to really try to keep you updated as much as we can on things that are going to happen, that are planned, that already happened, but we want to be intentional about rolling those out so it's not overwhelming to you. So that'll be monthly and quarterly reporting so that everybody has all the information they need to support your staff, particularly with CISDM use. And we will be doing those monthly webinars for next school year. And, Jesse did just talk about the 3 different ways that you can reach out to our team. So if anybody ever has specific questions about which is appropriate where, we'll make sure to support you in that area to make sure you get the answers that you need in a timely manner, as much as we can do that. So was the specific question that you just mentioned, Jesse, was that answered? I'm sorry, I already forget what it was.
Yeah, no, it does. And there was one more that came in around the same timeline. I know some folks probably have to jump off here at the end of the webinar, but just want to share that many of these updates, enhancements, et cetera, are on the screen here. We'll be sharing this out in an email to all registered participants who came today, but we'll also be posting information on Yammer and the National Resource Center. We really want to, again, have that high-level visibility about what's coming out from the national office as it relates to data change management work, data culture change management. And one of the specific questions was about when the new office hours will be reduced to once a month. Likely that will start around the same time frame as those monthly webinars. So we'll make that switch in August, where we'll have the once a month webinar that's topic focused, and once a month system office hours that's more general, come and have a chat. So more to come, certainly, from this team in terms of resource sharing and updating and timelines. We will share this PowerPoint out with this group as well, and we'll make sure that it's accessible on the National Resource Center following this webinar today, as well as the recording. So with that, we are at time. Chris, Gretchen, anything you want to add before we close out?
Nothing from me. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. Feel free to email us or use one of those 3 communication tools to get a system-related question in. So thanks so much. Have a great day.